Loretta Beaumont had built a bakery worth $750,000 from a single rented oven in a church basement in Halifax. And on the morning she called her 2 daughters and her son-in-law into the kitchen of that bakery, she was holding a folded piece of paper that none of them had seen before. She set it on the flour-dusted counter between a rack of cooling croissants and a commercial mixer that had been running since 4 in the morning. She placed both hands flat on either side of it. She looked at each of them in turn. Then she said, "I'm going to need one of you to take this place over when I'm gone, not when I die, when I step back. That's happening in 6 months, whether you're ready or not." Her older daughter, Renee Beaumont, was 34. She had a business degree from Dalhousie and a color-coded calendar on her phone and opinions about branding that she shared without being asked. She had worked in the bakery every summer from age 12 until she left for university, and she had not worked there since. She looked at the paper on the counter and smiled the way people smile when they believe a decision has already been made in their favor, and the meeting is a formality. Her younger daughter, Cecile Beaumont, was 29. She had dropped out of a graphic design program in her second year and had been working at the bakery part-time for the past 3 years. Mostly on weekends, mostly doing things that needed doing without being asked. She arrived to every shift 15 minutes early. She left 15 minutes after close. She had not once asked for a raise, though she deserved one. She looked at the paper on the counter and looked at her mother's face. The son-in-law was Renee's husband, Patrick Cote. He worked in commercial real estate and spoke about square footage and market value, the way some people speak about things they love, which is to say constantly and without reading the room. He had come to the meeting uninvited. Loretta had looked at him when he walked in and said nothing, because there are battles worth picking and battles that tell you what you need to know simply by beginning. Loretta said, "The 3 of you are going to run this bakery for 4 weeks. I am going to Charlottetown. My sister is not well, and I am the only one she has." She paused. "There is $200 in the cash register. That is the operating budget for the first week. Suppliers are paid net 30. The lease is current. Everything else comes from what you make." Patrick said, "$200 for a week of operations?" Loretta looked at him. The bakery opened with less. She left the next morning at 6:15 with 1 bag and her sister's address on a folded piece of paper in her coat pocket. She did not leave a management guide. She did not leave a systems document. She left the recipe binders, the supplier list, and a note on the walk-in cooler that said, "Butter order due Thursday. Don't be late." Cecile arrived at 4 the next morning because that was when the bread needed to start. She let herself in with her key. She turned on the ovens. She checked the flour stock. She wrote the day's production list on the whiteboard the way Loretta always had, top to bottom, in order of oven time. She had watched her mother do this for 3 years and had never been told to memorize it. She had memorized it anyway. Renee arrived at 8:30. The morning bake was already done. The cases were full. A lineup had formed outside at 8, and Cecile had opened 10 minutes early because the woman at the front of the line was 70 years old and standing in the November cold without gloves. Renee looked at the cases, at the customers, at her younger sister behind the counter and said, "We should talk about the marketing strategy." Cecile handed a customer her change, she said, after close. Patrick arrived at 10. He came through the front door in his coat and looked at the space the way he always looked at spaces, calculating something. He said to Renee, "This footprint could support at least 12 more tables. You're leaving revenue on the floor." There were no tables in the bakery. There had never been tables in the bakery. Loretta had decided 20 years ago that tables meant staff, and staff meant payroll, and payroll meant she needed to sell more to cover what it cost her to sell more. She had decided to keep it simple. Simple had made her $750,000. The first week, Cecile ran the kitchen. She did not ask Renee to help because every time she did, Renee suggested changing something. The packaging, the signage, the hours, and none of those things needed changing. What needed doing was the bread, the pastry, the squares and tarts that the Thursday regulars had been buying in the same quantities for 11 years. She made them. They sold. By Friday, the cash register held $680 more than it had on Monday morning. Cecile recorded it in the ledger with a pencil, the same ledger Loretta had kept since the bakery opened, each week on a new page, each day on a new line. Numbers in one column, notes in the other. The notes were small and specific. Slow Tuesday, rain. Good Saturday, hockey game downtown. Lost a croissant batch. Oven temp off by 25 degrees. 3 years of reading those notes and Cecile understood the bakery, the way you understand things you have paid attention to without being graded on. Renee spent the first week redesigning the logo on her laptop at the small desk in the back office. She had opinions about the font. She had opinions about the color. She said the current logo looked like something from 1987, which it was. Because it was from 1987, because Loretta had drawn it herself on a piece of graph paper when she was 31 years old, and had never seen a reason to change something that people recognized from 3 blocks away. Patrick spent the first week on the phone. He was talking to someone about the building. Loretta owned the building. She had bought it 12 years ago when the landlord had offered to sell, and Loretta had looked at the number, looked at what she had saved, and decided that paying rent to herself for the rest of her life was better than paying it to someone else. Patrick was talking to someone about what that building was worth now. Cecile could hear him through the wall when the mixer wasn't running. She did not say anything. She turned the mixer on. The second week, the butter supplier called. The order had not gone in. Loretta's note on the walk-in had said Thursday. Renee had been handling the supplier calls. She had said so at their Sunday meeting. She had made a list on her color-coded calendar. The order had not gone in because Renee had rescheduled the call and then not rescheduled it again. On Monday morning, the walk-in had enough butter for 2 days. Cecile drove to 3 grocery stores and bought every block of unsalted butter she could find, $42 out of her own pocket, and did not tell Renee or Patrick. She restocked it from the register on Tuesday when the emergency order from the supplier came in. The note she made in the ledger that day said, "Butter gap covered. Order system needs a backup." The third week, a woman came into the bakery on a Wednesday at 2 in the afternoon. She was perhaps 65, wearing a green wool coat that had seen better decades. A scarf tied at the neck the way older women in Cape Breton tied scarves, tight and practical. She stood at the case for a long time, looking. Then she asked for a single butter tart. $1.75. She counted the coins out of a small change purse, the kind that clicks shut. Her name was Vera Savoy. Cecile knew the name because Loretta had said it once, 2 years ago, pointing at a woman walking past the window. "That's Vera. Her husband used to deliver our flour. He died in the spring. She comes in sometimes. Give her the second one free. She won't ask for it." Cecile put 2 butter tarts in a small paper bag. She said, "The second one's on us today. We made too many." This was not true. They had made exactly the right number. Cecile had counted them out of the oven herself. Vera looked at the bag. She looked at Cecile. She said, "Your mother does the same thing." Cecile said, "I know." Vera sat on the step outside to eat them. She was there for 20 minutes. When she left, she put the empty bag in the bin by the door and adjusted her scarf and walked slowly in the direction of the harbor. Cecile watched her go. The fourth week, Patrick sat down with Renee at the back desk and showed her a document on his laptop. Numbers. A proposal. He had spoken to a developer he knew from work, a man who was buying up properties along the street for a mixed-use project. The building Loretta owned was in the middle of what this developer wanted. Patrick had run the numbers. The offer, if Loretta accepted, would give her more than she could earn from the bakery in the next 15 years. Renee looked at the numbers. She said, "Mom built this place." Patrick said, "And she could retire very comfortably from what selling it would give her." He was not wrong about the number. The number was real. The calculation was accurate. What he had not calculated, what did not appear anywhere in the document on his laptop, was what it would mean to the 70-year-old woman who stood in the cold, without gloves on a Tuesday morning, because she had been coming to this bakery for 11 years. What it would mean to Vera Savoy, who ate butter tarts on the front step. What it would mean to the woman who came in every Friday for a sourdough loaf, and had been coming in every Friday since Loretta's husband had died, and Loretta had kept the bakery open the very next morning because she said, standing still was worse than working. Cecile found the document on the desk on Thursday morning. Renee had left it printed out, face up, which was either an accident or an invitation. Cecile read it. She stood at the desk, in her apron with flour on her forearms, and she read every page. Then she put it back exactly as she had found it. She went to the kitchen. She started the next batch. That evening she called her mother. Loretta answered on the second ring. In the background there was the sound of a television, low, and the specific quiet of a house where someone is resting but not sleeping. Cecile said, "How is Aunt Rita?" Loretta said, slower, but still herself. A pause. "How's the bakery?" "Good," Cecile said. "Numbers are up 11% from the same 4 weeks last year." Loretta was quiet for a moment. She said, "That's the Christmas approach coming. You have to order the almond paste by next Friday or you won't get it in time for the December bakes." Cecile said, "Already ordered it. Last Tuesday." "Longer this time." Then Loretta said, "Is there something you need to tell me?" Cecile looked out the window of her apartment at the street below. 2 people walking a dog. A man on a bicycle, the ordinary movement of a city at 8 in the evening that never looked ordinary until you needed something familiar to hold on to. She said, "Patrick found a developer." For the building. The silence that followed lasted 6 seconds. Cecile counted. Loretta said, "I know about the developer. He called me 3 days ago." Another pause. "I told him I'd think about it." Cecile did not say anything. Loretta said, "I am thinking about it. That is the honest answer. I built that place for 40 years, and I am 61 years old, and my knees don't love the 4 a.m. starts anymore." She paused again. "But I also know what it is. I know what happens when you sell the thing you built. You can't buy it back." Cecile said, "No, you can't." They stayed on the line without speaking for a moment. The television in the background. The specific silence of 2 people who understand each other well enough not to fill the space with words. Loretta said, "What would you do with it, if it were yours?" Cecile thought about Vera Savoy on the front step. She thought about the ledger, 11 years of small notes in the second column, slow Tuesday, rain, good Saturday, hockey game, lost a batch, oven temp off by 25 degrees. She thought about the butter order she had covered from her own pocket, and the woman with no gloves and the sourdough and the almond paste she had already ordered. Because she had been paying attention for 3 years to things that mattered. Without anyone telling her they mattered, she said, "I would keep it the same. I'd change the back office workflow so the butter order never gets missed. I'd look at the Thursday morning window because we're always slow between 10 and noon, and I think we could do a lunch item, something simple, nothing that changes the kitchen. And I'd give Vera Savoy the second butter tart every time, because you already do and she already knows, and it doesn't cost us anything that matters." Loretta said nothing for a moment. Then she said, "The almond paste order, what did you put in the notes?" Cecile said, "Prepaid, delivery confirmed December 3rd, stored in the dry room on the second shelf, not the floor, because last year the floor got damp in the corner and we lost a bag." The silence that came after that one was different from the others. It was the silence of a woman who has been watching and has just seen what she was watching for. Loretta said, "I'll be home Sunday." She came back on Sunday afternoon. She walked into the bakery through the back door, the way she always did, and stood in the kitchen and looked at the prep table and the whiteboard and the lined-up mise en place for Monday morning's bake. She did not say anything for a long moment. Then she picked up the ledger from the shelf where it lived and turned to the last 4 weeks of pages. She read every entry, the numbers and the notes both. She ran her finger across one line, the butter entry, the $42, and the words, "Order system needs a backup." She set the ledger down. She looked at Cecile, who was wiping down the counter, and did not stop wiping it when her mother came in because there was still counter to wipe. Loretta said, "You covered the butter out of pocket." Cecile said, "It needed covering." "You didn't tell me." "It was handled." There was nothing to tell. Loretta sat down on the stool by the work table, the old one, the one with the crack along the left leg that she had repaired 3 times with wood glue and had never replaced because it still held, and replacing things that still hold is a waste. She sat on it the way she sat on it when she was tired, not dramatically tired, just the tired of a woman who has been up since 4 in the morning for 40 years and has earned the right to sit down when she needs to. She said, "Renee redesigned the logo." Cecile said, "I saw." "What do you think?" "I think the current one is recognizable from 3 blocks away." Loretta almost smiled. "Not quite," she said. "Patrick's developer." Cecile stopped wiping. She turned around. Loretta said, "I told him no. 3 days ago. Before you called." She paused. "I needed to know if you would tell me. That was the test. Not the 4 weeks. The phone call." Cecile looked at her mother. She said, "That's not a fair test." "No," Loretta said. "It's not." She paused. "Most of the important ones aren't." She stood up. She walked to the whiteboard. She looked at the Monday prep list, the handwriting neat and ordered, the same order she had always used, top to bottom, oven time. She picked up the marker. She added 1 line at the bottom. "Train Cecile on lease and supplier contracts. Week of deck, 9. She put the cap back on the marker. She said, without turning around, "Renee knows the business side. She'll be useful. But she needs to learn what the bakery is before she can lead it. Patrick needs to learn that not every building is a transaction." She turned around. "You already know what it is. You've known for a while. I just needed to see if you'd run it the same way when I wasn't watching." Cecile said, "I didn't run it the same way." Loretta raised an eyebrow. "I gave Vera the second one every time," Cecile said. "Not just once. Every time she came in." Loretta was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Good." She walked to the coat hook by the back door and hung up her coat. She washed her hands at the sink. She looked at the prep for Monday and started checking stock the way she had done every Sunday evening for 40 years. She moved through the kitchen the way you move through spaces your body knows by memory, every reach landing in the right place without looking. Cecile pulled her apron back on. They worked side by side without speaking. Because there was nothing that needed saying that the kitchen wasn't already saying for them. The sound of the walk-in opening and closing, the scratch of pencil on the inventory sheet. The small domestic rhythm of 2 people who know the same work and are doing it together. That evening, Loretta sat at the back desk. The bakery was locked, the ovens were off, the cases were clean and empty for the night. She opened the top drawer where she kept the things she kept. A photograph of the church basement where she had started, the original lease she had signed when she was 23 years old, and a single butter tart in a paper bag, the one she had brought back from Charlottetown because the bakery near her sister's house made them small and too sweet, and she had wanted to remember what a proper one tasted like. She ate it at the desk. She looked at the photograph, the church basement, the borrowed oven, the folding table she had used as a prep station. She had been 23 years old and had exactly enough money to buy ingredients for 1 week, and the absolute conviction, which was not confidence and was not certainty but was something more durable than either, that the work itself would carry her if she kept doing it. She had been right. She put the empty bag in the bin. She closed the drawer. She turned off the desk lamp. She walked out through the kitchen and through the back door and locked it behind her. Monday morning at 4, the oven was already on when she arrived. Cecile's coat was on the hook by the back door. The whiteboard prep list had one addition in the lower margin, small penciled in. Almond paste confirmed, shelf 2, dry room. All good. Loretta read it. She stood in the kitchen alone for a moment. She looked at the ovens and the work table, and the ledger on the shelf, and the whiteboard, and the 40 years of work that lived in this room in the flour dust, and the grease, marks, and the crack in the floor tile that she had been meaning to fix since 2009, and probably never would now. She thought about what her own mother had told her when she opened the bakery. Her mother had said, "You can teach someone a recipe. You can't teach someone to care whether it's right. She tied on her apron. She started the bread. 6 months later, the sign above the door still said Beaumont's Bakery. The same hand-painted letters in the same dark green as the door, slightly faded at the edges in a way that had stopped looking worn years ago and started looking permanent. Loretta came in on Tuesday and Thursday mornings, not because she needed to, but because 4 o'clock had been her hour for 40 years, and her body had not been informed that things had changed. Cecile ran the kitchen. She had taken on a second baker on Saturday mornings, a young man named Ethan, who had been cooking at a hotel downtown and wanted to learn pastry. She was teaching him the way Loretta had taught her, not with instructions first, but with repetition, standing beside him, correcting the hand position on the lamination, saying, "Watch the color, not the clock," the way Loretta had said it to her 8 years ago in this same kitchen. Renee handled the accounts and the supplier relationships. She had stopped redesigning the logo. She had, 3 months in, asked Cecile to walk her through the ledger from the beginning, all 11 years of it, and had sat at the back desk for 2 evenings reading every entry. She had not said anything when she finished. She had closed the ledger and put it back on the shelf, and the next morning she had come in at 8, which was still late but was earlier than before, and had asked what needed doing. Patrick had not come back. Not in a professional capacity, not in a proposed development capacity. He came in sometimes on Saturday mornings to pick up bread because Renee asked him to, and he stood at the counter and ordered without looking at the square footage, and that was its own kind of progress. Vera Savoy came in on Wednesdays. She always ordered 1 butter tart. She always got 2 in the bag. She had stopped remarking on it. She sat on the step outside if the weather allowed, and inside at the small bench by the window if it didn't, and she ate them the way she did everything, slowly, without rushing, with the full attention of a person who has learned that the things worth having are worth taking time with. On a Wednesday in April, Cecile was behind the counter when Vera came in. The exchange was the same as always. 1 butter tart, 2 in the bag, coins counted out of the click-shut purse. But as Vera was turning to go, she stopped. She turned back. She said, "Your mother taught you well." Cecil said she did. Vera said, "I mean the second one." She held up the bag. "She started doing that when my husband's was still alive. He used to pick up the Wednesday order for me when his route went past. She gave him 2 every time. He never told me. I found out after." She paused. "Some things you only find out after." She went to the bench by the window. She sat down. She opened the bag. Cecile watched her for a moment. Then she turned back to the counter because there were people waiting and bread to wrap, and a Wednesday to finish the same way every Wednesday before it had been finished, which was by doing what needed doing until it was done. The bakery had opened in November 1984 in a church basement with a borrowed oven and a folding table, and a woman who had decided that the work itself would carry her. It was still open. That was the whole story.